Let's enjoy new powerful motivational story on Storytelling and Beyond, and subscribe, like and share if you like. James stepped through the door, exhaustion clinging to him like a second skin. The weight of the day bore down on his shoulders, his boss's apologetic voice still echoed in his mind. "We have to let you go, James. It's not personal." But that didn't make it any less painful. After years of dedication, he was cast aside, just like that. The house was eerily quiet. He set his keys on the counter, expecting to find Emily curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Instead, she was waiting in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, foot tapping against the polished floor. "You're late," she said coldly. James sighed, rubbing his temples. "Emily, Save it." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. She held up an envelope, the severance package he had barely glanced at. His heart sank. She already knew. "You lost your job." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. James swallowed hard. He had rehearsed this moment in his head, planned to tell her gently, to reassure her that things would be okay. But before he could even begin, she scoffed, shaking her head. "I can't believe this," she muttered, pacing the room. "Do you have any idea what this means for me? For us?" He blinked. "For her? Emily, it's just a setback. I'll find something else." Her laugh was hollow, bitter. "Find something else? Do you think we can survive on your hope? The house, the vacations, the lifestyle, we can't afford any of it now." He stared at her, a strange sense of detachment washing over him. He had always believed they were a team. That no matter what happened, they would face it together. But standing there, watching the way her lips curled in disdain, he realized how terribly wrong he had been. Emily turned suddenly, her heels clicking against the floor as she strode toward the bedroom. Seconds later, she reappeared, dragging his suitcase behind her. It thudded against the hardwood floor. "Get out." For a moment, he thought he misheard. His heart pounded. "Emily, I won't live with a failure." Her words were ice. "I married a man who could provide. Not a loser who gets fired." James felt like the air had been sucked from the room. His stomach twisted, a cold numbness spreading through him. She wasn't even angry. She was done. The woman he had loved, had built a life with, was throwing him away like he was nothing more than a broken piece of furniture. The silence stretched. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, James picked up the suitcase. He turned to the door, hesitating for just a second, waiting, perhaps, for her to stop him. To say something, anything, that might make him believe this was still salvageable. But Emily just folded her arms, expression unreadable. James stepped out into the night, the freezing wind cutting through his jacket. The door slammed shut behind him with a finality that sent a chill down his spine. The streets were quiet. A car passed by, headlights momentarily illuminating his face, his breath visible in the icy air. He looked up at the house one last time, his mind numb. He had lost everything. Or at least, that's what she thought. James walked down the dimly lit street, his suitcase rolling behind him on the uneven pavement. The cold bit through his thin jacket, but the chill he felt inside was far worse. He had never imagined this moment. The woman he loved, the life he had built, all gone in an instant. He kept walking without direction, his mind replaying the cruel words she had thrown at him. Failure. Loser. Worthless. They echoed in his ears like a cruel joke. But as he turned a corner, something shifted inside him. The weight on his chest began to lift, replaced by something he had not felt in a long time. Relief. He hailed a cab, giving an address he had never shared with Emily. The driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror, probably assuming he had just come from a bad breakup. James leaned his head against the window, watching the city blur past. 15 minutes later, the cab pulled up in front of a towering high-rise. The doorman greeted him with a polite nod, holding the door open as James stepped inside. The lobby was warm, filled with soft lighting and the scent of fresh flowers. It was a stark contrast to the cold night he had just come from. James took the elevator to the top floor. The doors slid open to reveal a space that was nothing like the home he had just been thrown out of. The penthouse stretched before him, modern yet inviting, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. He walked through the spacious living area, letting the silence settle around him. For years, he had kept this place a secret. It was his sanctuary, his escape from the pressures of work, the expectations of others, and the growing feeling that something was missing in his life. He had bought it quietly, investing in properties, stocks, and businesses, never revealing the extent of his wealth to anyone, not even Emily. He had wanted their love to be real, untainted by money. But now, standing in the middle of his true home, he saw things clearly. She had never loved him for who he was. She had only loved the security he provided. The moment that was gone, so was she. His phone vibrated on the counter. Dozens of missed calls and messages, but none from Emily. Instead, they were from executives, investors, and business partners who respected him, valued his mind, and wanted to work with him. He exhaled slowly, a new determination settling in his chest. She had thrown him away like he was nothing. But she had no idea who he really was. James walked over to the bar, poured himself a drink, and took a slow sip as he looked out over the city. He was not broken. He was not defeated. He had just been given a chance to start over, without the weight of someone who never truly believed in him. He set the glass down, rolling his shoulders back. It was time to step into the life he had always kept hidden. This was not the end. This was just the beginning. James woke up the next morning to the golden light of dawn streaming through the massive windows of his penthouse. The city below buzzed with life, a reminder that the world moved on regardless of personal losses. He stretched, feeling lighter than he had in years. There was no weight of pretense, no need to meet anyone's expectations. As he sipped his coffee, he glanced at his phone. Another flood of messages, but still nothing from Emily. He had expected at least a message of regret, a half-hearted attempt to check on him, but there was nothing. The silence confirmed what he already knew: she never truly cared for him beyond what he could provide. With a deep breath, he turned his attention to what mattered. His investments had been growing steadily, but he had always played it safe, keeping a low profile. Now, free from the burden of a superficial marriage, he decided it was time to step into the world as the man he truly was. Later that day, James arrived at one of the city's most exclusive business clubs. The room was filled with powerful figures, investors, CEOs, and entrepreneurs who shaped industries. As he walked in, conversations paused, eyes turned to him with recognition and respect. An old acquaintance, Daniel, a well-known venture capitalist, approached him with a firm handshake. "James, it's been a while. Heard you left your company. What's next?" James smiled, feeling a sense of control he had long forgotten. "Not left, Daniel. Pushed out. Best thing that ever happened to me." Daniel laughed. "Then you're free to do something bigger. I have a proposal that might interest you." James listened as Daniel outlined an opportunity, an expansion project that needed a sharp mind and a bold investor. It was risky, but James had spent years being cautious. Now, he was ready to take chances, not just in business, but in life. The meeting ended with handshakes and new possibilities. As James stepped out onto the club's balcony, the city stretched before him, endless and full of opportunities. For the first time in years, he felt completely in control of his destiny. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted a familiar figure in the restaurant below. Emily was sitting across from a man, leaning in with a practiced smile. He recognized the expression, the same one she used to give him when she wanted something. A strange sense of detachment washed over him. The woman who had thrown him out without hesitation was now looking for someone else to hold on to. But he was no longer the man she had discarded. He was something greater. With a calm exhale, James turned and walked away, stepping fully into the life that had always been waiting for him. Days turned into weeks, and James embraced his new reality. Without the weight of his past holding him back, he focused on his growing empire, making bold business moves that set him apart. His name started appearing in financial articles, whispered in elite circles, and respected in boardrooms. The man Emily had thrown away as a failure was now becoming one of the most sought-after minds in the industry. One evening, as James was reviewing contracts in his penthouse, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He debated ignoring it, but something made him pick up. "James, it's me." Emily's voice trembled slightly, as if she wasn't sure how to begin. He leaned back. James listened as Emily hesitated on the other end of the line. There was a nervousness in her voice, something he had never heard before. Gone was the cold, confident woman who had thrown him out without a second thought. Now, she sounded uncertain, almost desperate. "I've been thinking about everything," she continued. "I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. I was scared, James. I didn't know how to handle the situation. I miss you." James let the silence stretch, giving her just enough time to sit with the weight of her own words. He looked out at the city skyline, the empire he had built without her. A few months ago, he might have longed to hear those words, might have held on to the hope that she still loved him. But now, he saw everything clearly. "Emily," he said finally, his voice calm, steady. "You didn't leave because you were scared. You left because I was no longer useful to you." "That's not true," she protested. It is," he interrupted, but there was no anger in his voice. "And that's okay. Because now, I see the truth. I used to think losing you was the worst thing that could happen to me. But it was actually the best." The silence on the other end was deafening. Emily wasn't used to this version of him, the one who no longer needed her validation. "I heard things are not going well for you," he continued. "I assume that's why you called?" She let out a shaky breath. "James, I just wanted to see you. To talk." "I appreciate the call," he said, his voice polite but distant. "But my life has changed. And so have my priorities." He didn't need to say anything more. The message was clear. Emily sniffled, as if she might cry, but James felt nothing. No guilt, no anger, just peace. "Goodbye, Emily," he said, and with that, he ended the call. He stared at the phone for a moment before setting it down. A weight he hadn't realized was still lingering had finally lifted. There was no need for revenge, no need for bitterness. The best response was simply moving on and living his life to the fullest. As he poured himself a drink and stepped onto the balcony, the cool breeze hit his face, carrying with it the scent of possibility. He was no longer the man Emily had walked away from. He was stronger, wiser, and free. And as he stood there, looking out at the life he had built, he realized something. He had never been happier. To hear more inspiring stories filled with emotion, twists, and life-changing lessons, subscribe to Storytelling and Beyond. Let's journey together through the power of storytelling.